Hi, everyone. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Monday as we see the last of the rain exit in out of the eastern states now. And we had, some snow overnight in some places, some parts of northeastern Pennsylvania getting up to half a foot, maybe even a little bit more. Uh, Parts of northern New Jersey got a few inches and then went over to rain. Same for northern areas of the Hudson Valley. Along the coast, it was a coating to an inch. Actually, probably more like not the inch part. Well, there was a few half-inch amounts. So let's say a coating to a half an inch in some places. So, this weather system is done now. And now we're going to transition over to a very cold air mass. And the coldest of the cold air will be here Thursday and Friday. So in between, we've got a couple of waves that are going through. Now, I'm going to show you the NAM model. It's quite overdone in my view in terms of the precip it shows. At least I think it is. Um, I have to, when I look at this, one of the things I look at is the precipitation in terms of what is that doing? That's showing radar echoes, but a lot of times it's overstated. And I'm going to take a look at the one of the tighter NAM models here and see what we can come up with. This is the brand new run that just came out. And I like to see 24-hour snowfall, 24-hour rainfall. So let me switch over to one that might have that. No, none of them do. Okay, so I really can't tell other than to break it down visually. So we'll look at total accumulated precip, and you got to remember that much of this is from just a few hours of what just happened. So when we look at it over time, you'll notice that this is what just fell, and when we run this through, you really don't see any measurable getting added to it until very late in the game here on Tuesday night. So it does add a little bit of measurable, so at least to get a sense of what is being indicated here in terms of precip. So this is likely to be what's being shown is likely to be overdone. So I guess we could probably put in that there could be a couple of showers or a couple of snow showers with this as this first wave goes out. There's a second wave that's going to develop, but that goes out way south. And then we transition over to the Arctic air mass that's coming down for Thursday into Friday. It's a pretty formidable air mass that's coming down, and I'll show you in a second here. Let me just get this back to where it was, and so we can go out to 84 hours here. And what starts to happen is, of course, the lake effect machines get turned on, and there's going to be some pretty decent snows up in lake effect land. Now, what I think will happen is, and this is late Thursday, is the coldest of the cold air arrives. There's a bit of a trough here that's in upstate New York that'll be swinging through here sometime Thursday night. So I'm thinking anytime during the day, Thursday night, there might be some snow showers or even a heavier snow squall that could drive southward. And sometimes with those things, it snows really hard for about 10 minutes and it really quickly whitens up the ground, and then it's done. And then we'll get into the cold air, the coldest of the cold air, and only goes here till Thursday night. So we'll look at the 2-meter temperatures. And this is during the day Thursday, temperatures are not going to, once they get into the 20s Wednesday night, they're going to stay in the 20s all day Thursday. And then Thursday night we'll be headed our way down. This is actually Thursday evening where we see temperatures down already in the teens. And I can take the GFS out to the next period, and I'll get a little tighter so you can see how cold it gets, because it does get cold enough that actually in some stations that have small data sets, they could see record cold. But here's Friday morning, where we have lows in the single digits and low teens across much of New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Even a few below zero temperatures show up in upstate New York, and this is a really, really impressive cold shot for this time of year. And what's happening is, and you can watch it play out here on the upper air, there's a very strong polar vortex that's coming down. And you can see it right here is the center of it. So the darkest blue is the coldest of the cold air, and we get into it. Now, notice, by the way, that it doesn't get all the way down south. I mean, it'll get colder as you go south, but the core of the cold air is very tight. The jet is very, very strong. You see these lines when they're close together. Those are very strong winds in the upper atmosphere. When they widen out, the winds are lighter. The coldest of the cold air is really being kept in this kind of tight ball across the Northeast and into the Mid-Atlantic states. And then as we go into Friday, it winds up pulling out. So I'll show you on the GFS. There's that cold air. It comes down, and then it pulls out for later Friday and Friday night. Now, once that pulls out, warmer air is going to start coming up from the southwest. The flow gets more west-southwest with time, so there's going to be some overrunning precip, warm advection precip. In other words, the warm air advecting northeastward creates an area of precipitation. And when we take a look, you'll see it here on the surface map. By the way, here are some of these, squalls that I'm talking about with this trough going through, and that's really very cold air here for Friday morning. Now, here's a system that comes into the west, and it spreads quite a bit of snow across Montana, the Dakotas, and back through Minnesota. This is that warmer air that's coming back eastward to replace the Arctic air. And one of the things you have to look out for, and this is something we're not going to know till we get a little closer, but how the high moves offshore is going to be very important. If it moves off, if the high winds up moving off, say, off the New England coast someplace, that's going to wedge down cold air into the Appalachians and areas further south. So that is going to create a freezing rain, sleet situation. And of course, there is some snow ahead of it as that warm air moves in. So I think, Saturday we probably maybe even as early as later Friday night, GFS might be a little bit slow. We could get into some snow in the Northeast, and then you see that area of sleet and freezing rain that it breaks out, and there's that. This is kind of how it winds up wedging down into the mountains. Now the high goes on the GFS goes out to the south. When we look at the Canadian model, and I don't have a lot of faith in this, but I just want to show you on the Canadian model. The high actually goes out over New England, so that is that would make it a different scenario in the sense that there'll be colder air that'll be trapped in longer, and it does show that in terms of the snow that it has. And then you see that wedged in area of ice that's down into Virginia and even into parts of southwestern Pennsylvania, and actually even into the mountains of North Carolina. I don't know how overstated it might be. It could very well be overstated. I'm not sure. And then that weather system, because the main low is forecast to go so far to the west, you're going to eventually just get a warm front through here, and then a cold front comes through, and after that it turns colder and drier. Not a cold like this first shot of cold air that's coming through, but definitely going to turn colder again. Now, let's look at the long range, because there is a pattern shift underway. I'm going to think that it's temporary, but we'll see what happens. And we're not 100% convinced on how this all is going to play out specifically, because there's just so much going on. A couple of things that happen is, first of all, we have lost that negative North Atlantic oscillation. So you don't have the blocking or some semblance of it going into once this vortex pulls out. And by the way, you can see where that vortex is. The flow of air is straight out of the polar regions and moves into the east. So here's your big vortex. And what would if you're a winter weather lover, you would have wanted some kind of negative North Atlantic oscillation where there's a ridge building here, so it sort of holds the vortex in place. But you don't have that, or you're not going to have that anyway. And that's why that vortex, you see how it just pulls out, and then once that happens, you get a ridge that builds up in the east, and you still have a cold flow coming out of Canada here behind this trough that sets up, after whatever happens next weekend, for another shot of cold air. Again, not as cold as what we had, because you don't have a whole gigantic vortex coming down. And then over time, what the model does is it tends to want to shift the trough a little bit more to the west, although the GFS still has, some cold shots here. I mean, this is still a chilly flow. This is out at day 10, so we're coming into Christmas. So, the GFS is not really that warm when we go. A few people have been talking about this. At least, it's not some sort of continuous warm. Beyond day 10, then you get into, again, more of a transitional period here where, this ridge tries to build in the east, and you have a ridge out south in the Pacific, just off the Pacific coast. So now you've got the trough down out in the west. So this is going to be a warmer flow. The flow from Canada goes into the western states toward the end of the period. But I don't think it's a something that locks in, because you're starting to get toward the end of the period a few things happening. There's a ridge that's shown to try to start to build back up in the eastern Atlantic toward Greenland, and that's going to change the profile eventually into North America. So there might be some work to do over time. You still have these weather systems coming in off the Pacific. The Pacific jet is pretty active there. So let's see how this evolves. I'm not 100% sure how this all plays out. Whether if you've gotten one thing out of watching these things change over the long range, is that they do change and they do adjust. So let's see what goes on first for this week. We'll look at what the models do later today. This is what we have to look forward to on Friday morning. And on the temperature map, the single digits go, down into New Jersey. You've got some single digits down even into western parts of Virginia. I mean, this is all cold air. And here's your below zero. I don't know why the model keeps popping up these minus 20s and minus 30s in Pennsylvania, but you've got these like areas of below zero here, kind of like this, and this is a pretty solid cold shot for this time of year. I mean, just to measure it in terms of normals, because our average highs this time of year are still in the low to mid 40s. So when you look at it in terms of normals, I mean, we're talking temperatures running 20 to 25 degrees or more below normal, and that below normal air stays into Saturday and then gets whittled away as we go into Saturday night and Sunday, and that's when, by that time, the warm front would have already gone through. So, let's see what happens with regards to this week. Sometimes with these warm advection cases, you can put down several inches of snow before you get a changeover, and I think this might be a snow to ice, a snow to maybe significant ice in some places. We'll see. But let's see what the models do later today. So have a great day, and of course, you've got more coming up on the website, meteorologistjoechaffee.com. You can download my weather app and subscribe to my forecasts for New York, New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, the Hudson Valley, and eastern Pennsylvania for 99 cents for $1 a month. And also you can please subscribe to my YouTube channel page, because that subscription is absolutely free, and I promise it always will be.